Hello, welcome to week 3 lecture 15. Today we will talk little more about phonology. In the last class I introduced phonology to you. Today we will explore this field. In the last class I already talked about some of the distributions and all. I also introduced phonemic inventory. Today I will talk in details about it. I will also talk about some of the phonological process like assimilation and dissimilation. Of course, there are other processes as well, but we will not discuss that here today. I will talk about distinctive features, natural classes and marked and unmarked features. What are they? So, we will discuss all those. So, if you remember in the last class I talked about contrastive distribution and complementary distribution. Another type of distribution that we see is called free variation. So, this is actually not a distribution, but what we see is variation in pronunciation. So, one may say economics or one can even say economics, or in some of the words in Indian languages you can say that some people say Jamuna, others say Yamuna. Both are correct and both can be understood. So, these things, the variation between j and ya for this particular word in Jamuna or Yamuna, or the variation in economics or economics, these are called free variation, because this can actually change. So, this can even change just like that. So, maybe sometimes I will say Jamuna, sometimes I will say Yamuna. So, you can also take a notice of that. Sometimes you might say economics, the other times you may say economics. So, these variations which do not bring any change in the meaning, it can be easily understood, but people do shift between these two variations. Those are called free variations. They are not affected due to any environment, they are not affected due to any context, they are just free. They can actually, a speaker can say Jamuna or the same speaker can say in the same context Yamuna. So, it does not matter. So, these type of changes or varieties are called free variation, like Sri, if I have to say like Sri Gangadhar or Shri Gangadhar. So, Sri or Shri both can be pronounced and both are correct and both will be understood by the native speakers. So, these are just in free variations. Now, looking more about phonemic inventory. So, any phonological description of any language has to be systematically arranged. So, if we are looking at a particular language, so maybe those can be languages like Hindi, English, Uriya, Tamil, or some minor languages Dhimal, Kuruk. So, when we are looking or exploring the sound systems of these languages, what we need to do in our initial stage is that, of course, we collect lots of words and sentences to know the sound patterns, and then we want to see what are the sounds those are available or those are spoken by the speakers of that language. So, of course, to make it look more arranged, more organized, we make a list of it. So, first of all, we make a list of all the sounds those are possible in that language, those are articulated by the speakers of that language, and then next step is looking at what are the sounds those make difference in the meanings of that language. So, if you remember in the last class I gave you the example of cat and cat. So, one with aspiration k, cat. So, English speaker can say both, or one who is speaking English can say both cat and cat. So, both sounds are possible in English, but then they do not contribute in the meaning. Meaning do not change depending on whether I am saying k or I am saying kha. So, cat or cat, the meaning remains same. So, when we are looking at the meaning, then we are looking at phonemic contrast, because phonemic contrast means the contrast should be revealed in the meaning. The meaning should vary, should change. So, if I say bin and pin, of course, the meanings are changing. That means they are different phonemic units. They are different units, they are not part of the same unit. like k and kh. So, these are different phonemic units, and the smallest phonological unit is called phoneme. So, first we look at all the phonemes, and then we want to see the contrast, that which sounds are actually contributing in the meaning change. So, those which are there to bring change in the meaning or which contribute in the meaning change are listed. So, there can be a list of sounds which are possible in the language, and then there can be another list of sounds which actually contribute in the meaning change of the sentence. So, you can see the list of phonemic inventory of Hindi. So, this is the list. So, this is the list for the consonant. You can see all the consonant sounds, those are possible in Hindi and which actually contributes in the meaning change. Now, if you look carefully to this chart, you will notice that something is missing. So, I hope you can guess what is missing. If not, please try to think what is missing here. Okay, so, I will tell you what is missing. The missing thing is that in Hindi, like in many other Indo-Aryan languages, there is a four-way contrast in stop consonants. So, what we get is four-way contrast, that is, we get pairs of aspirated and not aspirated consonant sounds. So, this chart shows only, this chart only shows the p, b sounds, but we also have these are voiced and voiceless pair, but we also have aspirated pairs with both of these sounds. So, you can see p, ph, b, bh. So, all these have their own difference. P is just bilabial plosive consonant, while b is voiced one. Of course, it is also bilabial plosive. Ph is bilabial plosive aspirated, while bh is bilabial plosive voiced aspirated. That is why we say that there is a four-way contrast for the plosive or the stop consonants in most of the Indo-Aryan languages. So, this was about Hindi. About English, you can see this is again the phonemic inventory for English, consonant sounds, and you can see these are the sounds which actually contribute in the meaning change in English. So, we can either make charts like this, which is actually mostly copied from the IPA chart, and then only those symbols have been marked which are present in Hindi. And then we can also modify it little according to our need and create a chart like this. So, in both the cases, generally when we create a phonemic inventory, we want to plot the sounds like this. So, consonant sounds are plotted like this, and vowel sounds can be plotted on a tabular form like this, or on the vowel chart that you have in IPA. In that chart also at times the vowel sounds are plotted. So, if you are planning to create a phonemic inventory, maybe for the language you are speaking, you can create both. You can create a vowel chart and then plot the vowel sounds of your language on that, and along with that you can also create this type of a table for both the vowel and the consonant. So, here you can also easily know which are the exact sound. You know that there is front high vowel and back high vowel present in English. So, you will know all those. So, this is a source given below. If you go there, you can even actually click to the sounds and listen to the sounds. So, you might explore that. Now, this was about the collection of sounds that the languages have. So, all the languages have their own collection of sounds. Some do overlap with other languages and others may not. So, every language has its own set of sounds. Now, what happens when we speak? We generally do not stick to exact those sounds. Depending on the environment, about environment I have talked in my last lecture. So, depending on the environment, the sound can be little altered, little changed. But why do we make these changes in the sounds? For the convenience of speaking. When we are speaking, we are not very conscious that I am going to utter bilabial plosive now, which will be followed by a vowel and then followed by a nasal sound to produce a word like bin. I am not planning that very consciously, no one does. So, when you are speaking your own native language, you are very fluent in that. You do not have time to think and process, right. So, your brain gives the signal that this has to be spoken, and your speech organs, they work accordingly and the speech is articulated. So, we do not think, right. So, when we articulate anything or when we say something, what we want to do is that we want to adapt the most convenient path, so that we can easily do it. We do not want to make things difficult for us, and about language it is the same. We want to stick to the most convenient way of saying anything. So, and because when we speak, we are very fluent, the process is very fast. So, what we do in the process is that, so you know k is a vowel sound. So, when we are saying k, like for car or key, k we produce from, it is a vowel sound. So, from back of the mouth. You can refer to your IBA chart. Now, when we are saying words with front vowels like E, A, key, front vowel E. Now, what we are doing, the k is actually, we are not speaking from the back, it is of course the back consonant, but still we are shifting it little towards the front portion of our mouth, which is the palate portion, right. So, the k sound actually, the blocking of the ear is actually getting little upwards. From the back it is coming upwards. Why? Because after that we will have to speak a front vowel. So, rather than doing so much of exercise back and then again coming front, we are little shifting it towards the front part. So, that is called palatalization of k sound. Similarly, when we say words like peel and pool, you can see that p sound in pool is little different than the p sound in peel and pool, because poo, oo is a back vowel and pe is a front vowel. So, depending on the vowel, we are also shifting the consonant little bit. There is slight shift in the movement, in the blocking of the ear. If we have to take pictures of our oral cavity, in the pictures we can plot. If we plot, we will see that in peel the p is little backwards, where the exact location where we are blocking the ear, and in pool the exact location where we are blocking the ear for p sound, it is little towards the upper side, not towards the back, it is coming little front. So, this is called labialization. So, these basically are the process which are called assimilation. Assimilation means we are trying to according to, depending on the environment, the other sounds are getting affected and they are trying to be like that. So, if there is a front vowel, the consonant will also come little towards front. If there is a back vowel, then maybe the consonant preceding it or following it will go little bit backwards. So, what happens is that the process is like one of the sounds which affects its other surrounding sounds. So, that is assimilation. Assimilation means all of them somewhere tries to become one. The place of articulation becomes closer to each other. Of course, they can't be exactly same, because one is vowel, one is consonant, and then there are the characteristics of the different consonants, they remain same. Yet the process becomes little similar, because the places become closer. Similar thing also happens with manner of articulation. So, for assimilation we can do both. We can bring the places of articulation closer, or we can make our manner of articulation similar, not same, similar. So, we can often see when there are vowel sounds in between two nasal consonant, the vowel sound becomes nasalized. Why? Because preceding sound is nasal, following sound is nasal, then the vowel in between also have a tendency of becoming nasalized. For example, we are saying man. So, it will be little difficult to actually not nasalize the a of man. So, in the process of saying a preceding vowel and following vowel, in the same go we are also making the vowel nasalized. We are saying man, with not with right. So, you can look at the example. This is an example where you can see that the R is becoming voiceless. So, why R is becoming voiceless? Because it is preceded by a voiceless consonant. So, when the consonants preceding the R sound, then it is becoming voiceless, like in P, T, K, all these are voiceless. But when we look at the other pairs which are voiced like B, D, G, the R remains R. So, R by default is voiced, but it gets the effect of voiceless because it is preceded by a voiceless consonant. So, this is an example of nasalization, and I hope you remember this. This was also a question which I asked in the last lecture. So, I asked you to solve this. So, this was about in which environment the vowel becomes nasalized. So, you can now easily know that before velar nasals the vowels are becoming nasalized, like in the examples which are highlighted here. So, because it is little difficult to utter a non-nasal vowel followed by a velar nasal, that is why the effect of the following consonant is on the preceding vowel and the vowel is becoming nasalized. Because we want to speak in the same manner or we want to speak from the same position, that is why we have this effect of assimilation, where sounds have a tendency of becoming similar. They do not become same, but they have a tendency of matching their manner of articulation or place of articulation. Now, that is one thing, one process, but we also have just the opposite process, where we see that the sounds which are next to each other, they tend to become different from each other. The effect of dissimilation is to make sounds more distinct from one another. So, one sound will become unlike the other. If it is very similar, it will try to become very different. Why? Because that also helps us in articulation and also in perception. If all the sounds are very similar, we may not understand. There might be some ambiguity or there might be difficulty in perceiving those sounds or understanding those. So, what happens? A difference is created. After a dissimilation rule has been applied, phonological elements look unlike each other. So, in English there are two types of suffixes and the both work for the same. So, we have words like angle and angular, electric and electrical. In both of these examples, what you can see is that in electric and electrical, ul is being added. So, electric, electrical, only ul sound is being added, that is fine. But when we see a similar ul being added with word like angle, angular, angular, so the r is silent. In English we do not pronounce it. So, it is angular. So, when we say angular, extra ear sound is being added, because it is little difficult to say angular, angular. So, ear sound is being added and it is there to create a difference between g and ear sound. So, there is this velar sound g and then there is this sound swa. So, both are very similar. So, in between comes a ear sound to create that separation, and then we have words like angular. But in k sound we do not need that, because k and are very different. But why so? Why I am saying this? G and are similar, but k and are not similar. You know both are velar. Then why do I say that? I say that because g is voiced. Why is k is voiceless? And you know that vowels are also voiced. So, we see that both are voiced. G and vowel a following it will also be voiced. So, in between there is this ear sound, but in k and followed by the vowel we do not need any sound, because one is voiceless, the other one is voiced. Vowel is voiced while k is voiceless. So, when there is some feature which are similar, and that is why to create a break of that similar pattern, we put some consonant or vowel sound in between. So, that is also done, that is called dissimilation. So, you see here that because both are voiced sound, so in between we are putting another consonant, while one is voiceless and other is voiced, we do not need to put that. So, that is the way of dissimilation. So, these two are the most common process of phonological processes, but of course, there are many other processes which changes sound when we speak or when certain words are in sentence, they are pronounced differently than when they are in isolation. So, there are various other processes, I am not going into those. Now, I will talk little about distinctive features. So, Chomsky and Halley described about it in this sound pattern of English. So, sounds were basically described based on articulatory properties and also acoustic properties. So, they were mostly about the features, how certain features can distinguish one sound from the other, and based on these features certain groups were made, and under these groups there were certain sounds which were clubbed together. So, in it can also be taken as binarism, like presence of one feature and not presence of another feature. Like in the previous example, I talked about the feature voicing, presence of voicing and not presence of voicing, due to which there is a change in the suffix. But so that can be done. Here also you can see in these examples presence and absence of voicing, bet, pet. How are they different? Because one is voiced sound, another is voiceless. So, when we talk about distinctive features, we again try to categorize consonant and vowels. So, for consonants, they are taken as non-syllabic ones, because we can't create syllables with consonants. With vowels, we create syllables. So, whenever you divide a word into different syllables, you know that each syllable has to have a vowel, one vowel is necessary. We can't have syllables only with consonants, there has to be a vowel. So, for consonant feature, to characterize the degree of stricture shared by all consonant except approximants, these are the feature which is taken. So, for consonants we know that air has to be blocked in the oral cavity, there has to be a closure of the articulators to block the air, and then they are not syllabic, we can't create syllables out of it. So, when if someone is saying plus CONS, which is short form of consonantal, then that implies that one is talking about these features. We do not need to mention all these features now. So, if just I write plus CONS, that means that it is a minus syllable. This sound do not have the capacity of creating syllable, or this sound has the feature of consonant. And when I say vowels, then of course, I can say plus syllable, because vowels are always needed to create syllable, they has the capacity of creating syllable. So, when we are talking about vowels, we can say plus syllable. So, these are some of the features which are attached with certain sounds. Now, for again there are certain subclasses. We know that the major two classes are vowels and consonants, and then again we can have certain subclasses. So, one of those classes is obstruents. So, obstruents are those sounds which are class of oral stops, affricatives and fricatives. So, now I will quickly tell you about affricates, because I have not mentioned about it. So, affricates are those sounds which when we utter those sounds, we stop the air in our mouth like we do for stops, but we release it like fricative. So, it is somewhere in between fricative and stop. The air is getting blocked in our mouth like a stop, but it is being released like a fricative, like the words ch, ch, j. So, if you want to utter words like chalk, you can realize that you are blocking the air like a stop. So, like the way you do for p, b, you are doing ch, you are just blocking the air totally ch. But when you are releasing it, there is that extra air coming out, what happens when you produce fricatives like sh, z. So, you produce ch, j, chalk, jump. So, obstruents are those class of sounds which are oral stops, affricates and fricatives. So, they are voiceless. For sonorants, those are those sounds which are nasal stops and liquids. So, nasals are mostly voiced. So, now we know that, and how can we mark it? So, you can see there are two sounds written, l, r. So, l is plus sonorant and minus obstruent. So, if some sound is plus sonorant, that means it will be minus obstruent. Again, these are two in binary thing. So, one presence of one means absence of another. So, how to distinguish stops from fricatives? Obstruents can help us in doing that. So, in fricative, unlike stops, the airflow is not totally blocked like sh, z, h, but in stops the air is totally blocked. So, there is again a feature called continuant to represent fricative kind of airflow. So, those consonant which are have the airflow of fricative, those can be taken as continuant. So, again oral and nasal stops are minus continuant. Why? Because you know in stop the manner of articulation is totally different than fricative. If fricative is plus continuant, then stops has to be minus continuant. But vowels, fricatives and approximants, they are plus continuant, because the process, the manner of articulation is similar. So, these are some of the distinctive features. So, if we have to sum up the distinctive features of consonant, we can sum up it like this. So, consonants are plus stops plus affricatives. So, for consonant plus consonant, stops, affricates, fricatives, approximants are not plus consonant, because in approximants we generally do not block the air totally like we do in fricatives, affricates and stops. For syllable, we know all of these are minus, because none of the consonants can create syllable. Similarly, you can see the other features and we can mark it with plus and minus, presence and absence of those features. Now, talking about natural classes. So, what happens, these distinctive features actually help us to understand the phonological rules which apply on these classes. So, distinctive features classify different sounds together, and these sounds are taken as natural classes. They belong to one particular group naturally. Why naturally? Because it depends on the way we are articulating it, the way we are producing those sounds. So, natural classes of sounds share certain phonetic properties, either manner of articulation or place of articulation or some other character, some other features. Some of the features are shared by them to be in one particular group or class. And these actually help us to understand various phonological rules. Rules like we talked about assimilation and dissimilation and other rules. So, when we look at these rules and if we think about these distinctive features and the classes, we get a better understanding of those. So, it is unlikely for any language to have a vowel getting nasalized before the assortment of consonants like d, s, k, t, h. So, vowels before these sounds may not get nasalized, but vowels after or before a nasal consonant like m, n might easily get nasalized, because they all fall under one class, that is nasal sounds. Similarly, palatalization of velar consonants occur in the context of front vowels, especially high ones like e, which are themselves produced with the tongue approximating the hard palate. So, when we produce e, the tongue is, the back portion of tongue is little raised actually. The e is a front vowel, but we see the tongue little bit coming upwards towards the hard palate, and that is why we see when there are preceding velar sounds, that has a tendency of becoming palatalized because of the effect of the vowel. So, again because they share the features. So, one feature is getting spread for the other sound as well, or when you can see nasal vowels between two nasal consonant becoming nasalized. So, when I talk about these things like a vowel getting nasalized in between two nasal consonants, that is very common thing to happen, that is very easily understood, right, because the preceding and the following vowel is nasal. So, the vowel is becoming nasalized, we are following the place of articulation, manner of articulation. So, now when we are following the manner of articulation, and that is why the vowel is also changing into nasalized form, this will be called unmarked feature. That is a default thing, that is very common across the languages. So, those features or those characteristics which are default of a language or which are very commonly seen, those are called unmarked features. But when we see exceptions or when some extra feature is being added to it, those are called marked features. So, across the languages we know that there has to be oral vowels and then we have nasal vowels. Do you know of any language where there is only set of nasal vowels, but no oral vowels? It is hard to think about any language like that, but you can easily think of certain languages where there are only vowels which are oral, but not nasal, or maybe there are one or two nasal vowels or oral vowels getting nasalized in certain context. So, what we see, the more common thing is oral vowel, not the nasal vowel. That is why oral vowel can be taken as unmarked thing, but nasal vowel is taken as the marked feature. Again, it depends on the language and depends on the environment and context. So, in general I can say that oral vowels are unmarked while nasal vowels are marked, but in certain contexts like the example of this man thing, you see that here I have written unmarked, because this feature where this vowel is becoming nasalized, this is again a very common phenomena. That is why this is unmarked, this is nothing new happening, it happens across languages. So, this is more common, that is why this is unmarked. So, markedness is actually when two sounds are in a two-way opposition, then the one with additional feature is taken as marked. Again we are looking at the similar features. So, if I say p and b, b will be taken as marked while p will be taken as unmarked. Why? Because for b there is one extra feature, voiced, while for p there is no, all the things which are there in p, b also has, but b has one extra feature, that is why we will say b is marked. So, unmarked feature can be perceived as a default system of a language. It is there, but those which carry some extra information or it changes in some certain environments, or there are certain restrictions in certain environments due to certain rules, it gets changed, those are called marked features. So, marked and unmarked features I will again talk about it when I will go into typology, because marked and unmarked features are not only about phonology, we study about it in different levels of linguistics. So, they are always there, but the core meaning of this remains same, where we see some extra thing or those features which are default of default system of the language, those are taken as unmarked, while when we see that certain thing is exceptionally it occurs, then we take it as marked one. So, these are some of the readings, I hope you will go through them for better understanding of this topic. I hope you enjoyed today's class. Thank you.